Hi, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Circle Up and Get Real, where we talk about things that matter with people who matter. I have a little bit of a cold, so I sound a little froggy today, but I feel great. So, today, I've been thinking a lot about the Olympics, as I'm sure we all have, and that locker room moment with the men's hockey team. The celebration, the speakerphone call, the offhand comment about the women's team. I'm not here to dissect the individuals. I'm more interested in what this reveals and whether there's more to it than meets the eye. So there's a lot of things we can unpack with this. What's really going on there is a reflection of a lot of things that I think we could talk about. And I'm thinking this morning as I'm getting ready, as I do most of the time, every day. Very, it's my thinking time for myself, and of course, I can only come from my own perspective on any of this. And as you know, if you know me at all, I'm an athlete. I was an All-American basketball player back in the day, and I've only been in women's locker rooms. Oh, that's not true. I was in a men's locker room one time when I was a sports reporter for KXJB TV in Fargo. I got to go to the Vikings game, and Bud Grant was the coach, and he allowed Rhonda and me in the locker room. I think we were the only women that got to go into the men's locker room and report. That was when I was in journalism, and longer story. I just thought of that though. So I have been in a men's locker room. I don't remember much, but I not enough to be able to give you a strong perspective. So I know what happens in women's locker rooms, at least in my day, back however long ago that was now. And I can't speak for how it must feel when you win something great and you are in the moment. And we won the national basketball championship when I was a freshman in college. I know that feeling. I know how fun it was. And I know that sometimes we get caught up in situations and we say things we wish we wouldn't have said, or we don't say things we wish we would have said. And in the moment, I know it can be really difficult. And so I struggle a little bit with that whole situation being one moment in time where we judge the behavior and the character of humans. Because I have my own judgments about a lot of things that happened in what we saw. And yet I'm trying to stay in curiosity and out of judgment. When I heard what was on the speakerphone, and I witnessed it just like everybody else did. I saw what I saw. And I'm just really curious about what happens when humor, it was a joke, right? It was a joke. When humor and hierarchy collide. What happens when the joke is by someone higher on the org chart? And this could be true of that situation, and it could be true in a lot of other situations. I've seen it many times as a consultant. People higher on the org chart have more power, whether they earn it, whether they claim it, whether they are the ones who say they do or not. I think that's just the structure of corporate culture. It's been that way. And so I'm also curious about the gender issue here. And I think there's a lot to unpack. And I don't know what it's like to be a person who is in that space with the FBI director of the United States having a beer and jumping around. And I mean, that you got to be caught up in that moment. I get it. Just like in corporate America, you get caught up in moments and you don't say what you wish you would have said. And the thing that occurs to me as really interesting is I also saw this morning the captain of the women's hockey team in a response to a reporter asking her what she thought about this situation. And I wrote down what she said in the video I watched because I think it's really important to get her perspective on what somebody's saying when they're saying, by the way, context, if you don't know it, the president was on the speakerphone with the hockey team saying, we're going to invite you, we're going to send you a plane, we'll get you to be at the White House at the State of the Union address. And by the way, we have to invite the women's team too. If we don't, I might get impeached. You can go back and listen to that. And so a joke, haha, funny, funny. Nobody in the locker room appeared to say anything to stand up for the women's team in that case. Although you did hear people in the background who were maybe saying things like 2 for 2, absolutely, we would need to invite the women's team. We don't know. We don't know what's happening. We can draw a conclusion based on our own lens and our own perspective about what we would do now, looking at a situation that we're not in the moment. And so all of that happened. And then the captain of the women's hockey team, which, by the way, the women's hockey team declined. I guess they were invited as well, and they declined for other reasons. So when the captain of the women's team was asked to address this situation, here's what she said. I thought the joke was distasteful and unfortunate. The way women are represented, it's a great teaching point to really shine light on how women should be championed for their amazing feats. And then she said, and now I have to sort of sit, and anyone has to sit in front of you. I'm guessing she's speaking to the media. I have to sit in front of you and explain someone else's behavior. It's not my responsibility. How mature. And again, I'm telling you this as a woman, from my lens, from my perspective, with only my experience. I don't know what it's like to be a man in a men's locker room as part of that kind of celebration and that kind of energy that happens. So all I know is what it feels like being a woman watching it. And yet you also know that my curiosity has me wonder what else could be going on, what else we could be doing, how else we could see things, because that's just the way I am wired. And so I am giving grace to the men in that locker room in a way that a lot of my female friends aren't. And, with good reason, there's a lot going on both sides here. So if it's just a joke, and if that's part of the conversation here, it was just a joke, you're taking it too seriously or you're getting too emotional about it. I've heard all of these kinds of conversations in response to situations like this. And in my mind, then I think, well, what makes something a joke? What makes it funny? Because to me, jokes are funny. What makes that funny? And there are a lot of things I could go back to and point to and say, insert your own situation here that has been called a locker room talk, or boys will be boys, or some of these, I'm going to call it an excuse, but some of these things to excuse behavior that we might question if it weren't done in, according to this, a locker room type setting. I think locker room talk that happens in locker rooms, in actual physical locker rooms, is different than locker room talk that happens on a tour bus or in another more public place. But I think we've been conditioned this way, haven't we? We've been conditioned this way. Again, go back to the hierarchy on the org chart. If you have a higher position on an org chart, apparently you have more opportunity to say whatever you want to say. And I only know, again, because I'm from a female perspective, how hard it's been in my career to say the things that I'm seeing or feeling, because feelings have been, I don't even know if this is true, but it has seemed that feelings are soft. And when you are in a business setting, you don't feel things, you don't get emotional, you stay logical. And so in that context, emotion, in that context I just shared, emotion in that context would be crying or upset or some kind of emotional reaction like that. I think what we forget is anger is also an emotion. And so is anger as an emotion okay in a boardroom or a locker room? But sadness or I'm trying to think of what else would cause tears, frustration, any of those other emotions that would cause tears is seemed soft. And I just wonder about that. I have male friends who are very sensitive and very emotional, and they've told me that it's hard to be themselves around other dudes because you can't be emotional when you're with another dude. That's coming from my male friends. And it's so interesting when one lens would say, hey, lighten up, and one lens would say, the other gender is like this. And if we are coming from our own perspective and we're only seeing our own perspective and we're expecting everybody to be like we are, we're missing so much nuance. And we're missing so many opportunities to take a step in another direction. Hi, Shelley. Good to see you. It's a perspective shift. I can't change my perception. I have my history, my way of seeing things, all of my history shapes my perception, how I see things. But from where I see them, I can shift that. I can go, okay, what I'm seeing through my own eyes looks at something different if I shift my perspective. And then I can say, wow, okay, let me think about being a young man in a locker room where we've just won the Olympic gold medal and we have all these kinds of things happening and all this caught up in the moment. And walking out of that and going, what just happened here? What didn't I say? What could I have done differently? Again, I've been on the other side of that, where I've allowed things like that to happen. Maybe not in a locker room setting, but in a corporate boardroom, where I have not said things, where I've looked around and thought, who's going to say something about this? And if nobody says anything, I leave thinking, was it just me? And all of that has been going on forever. This has been my experience in my 40 years of corporate life. And so we can talk about it in sports because right now we have a lot to talk about where I live. In the community I live, we have some amazing sports. I'm following 4 teams right now, 2 men's teams and 2 women's teams. North Dakota State men and women basketball are doing amazing. We'll get them. We'll get them on Saturday, women. We lost last night. And Concordia, my alma mater, the men and women's basketball teams are just doing so well, and it's so much fun to watch how they support each other. So I want to go back to the locker room where we were talking about, yeah, the phone call. The men's teams and the women's team there, from what I understand, are very supportive of each other. The Olympic men's hockey team and the Olympic women's hockey team are very supportive. One of the coaches for the women's team is the mother of 2 of the players on the men's team. Come on, they're combined. So I think I'm going to get in trouble for saying this probably, but I think it's going a little bit too far to say that something that happened in that moment defines the character of some of those people. We've been seeing behavior over decades from people that we are not holding to the kind of scrutiny we are holding these young men in the hockey locker room to. And I've always been someone who's really character driven. I admit that I don't do things the right way at times, and I would hope that I would own my mistakes. I would hope that I would learn in ways that would allow me to make different mistakes, because then I can move on. So this is really not about hockey, although yes, Moorhead Spud Hockey, Melissa, Melissa from Mississippi, who is a Moorhead fan. So yeah, we've got Moorhead Spud Hockey too. We've got a lot of good sports in our community. So it's not really about hockey. It's about emotional labor, like how heavy it feels sometimes. And Melissa says cherry pick accountability. Yeah, isn't that interesting? To cherry pick accountability. We can be accountable over here, but not over here. I think that's what my challenge for me is with character. If you turn on your character in one way in one setting, but you turn it off in another setting, I'm wondering about that. And I wonder about that for me. I think about that for me. I think the power structures that would cause humans to react in a way from emotions that they might not do if they had had the time to respond from a thinking space might create different outcomes. And it's so easy to get caught up in the emotion of things. It is. And I know so many women who say, I get emotional about things and I feel strongly about things. And that's when tears come to my eyes. And I can't show that in a boardroom. I will be chastised. It's career suicide. And so these women bottle up so many things that they want to share. In some cases, they're sharing they would like to share those emotions that bring tears, that are happy and joyful and emotional in that way. And then we learn, I guess, over time that anger as an emotion is okay in a boardroom, but sadness as an emotion in a boardroom isn't okay. And what I've been observing is how inefficient it seems to be to bring a logical perspective to an emotional situation, in any kind of emotion. Logic and emotion don't seem to go together so well. And so there must be a different way to do the things we've been trying to do. I don't know the better way in many cases. I don't know the better way. And I'm pretty sure that the only way to ever find out what is better is to do something different. And so if we're not willing to do something different and we double down on the way we've always done things and we stay in that space of this is the way it is, this is the way I've always been, we've never done it that way before, we always do it this way, whatever, that is insanity, according to Einstein, right? He said doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results is insanity. So I want to point out before I'm done here that this can be considered a gender issue, I suppose. Men do this, women do this, whatever. I'm going to tell you that I have some completely amazing male friends. Amazing. I've dated amazing males. I know these people. I have seen people's souls and hearts and spirits in conversations, probably more one-on-one. You know who you are, my male friends. You show me that it's okay to own your emotions and to be vulnerable and to be real because we've done that together over a beer, or we've had these kinds of conversations in our one-on-one coaching calls. Not even in person. We do this on Zoom, or we do this on Teams, or wherever we might meet. It's possible, you guys, to actually have real conversations that get us beyond manufactured right things to say, and that's just the way it is. Boys will be boys, girls will be girls, whatever it might be. If we don't start, I'm saying me too, right? If we don't start owning our place in some of these conversations, we're not going to move on. We're going to double down. We're going to stay in our silos. It's going to stay pretty much the way it is. My side believes this, your side believes that. It'll be a competition. We're for the orange team, not the purple team, whatever it might be. And we're not going to try to see things from a different point of view. I love this analogy. If you're watching on the video, you can see it's my beach ball. And I learned this from the book Fierce Conversations. And I love how she talks about everybody has a stripe on the beach ball. That's your perspective. You will see from that perspective. If mine's purple, I will see that purple. And the only way I can possibly shift it is to stand on the orange stripe and take a look for a second on what it might feel like to be on that orange stripe, or that green, or that blue, or yellow, or red. You can see this. And there's a spot where you blow up this beach ball where you can see all the colors come together. If we can stand on that spot where all the colors come together and see them equally valuable, whether that's a perspective from I don't know, male, female, old, young, immigrant, non-immigrant, whatever, pick a difference and see if you can take a step into that different perspective, your perception will shift. It will. Your perception will widen, and you'll be able to say, oh my gosh, it's not just the way I think it should be. There are other ways. The only way to better is through different. And if we don't do it differently, we're going to have the same thing, and then we're going to be below the line, closed, defensive, committed to being right, when we could have been open, curious, and committed to learning. Now, I'm not trying to resolve centuries of gender dynamics today. I'm just noticing these patterns, and then, just seeing whether there's a way to do it differently. It will take courage. It'll take different listening, different boundaries. And I, for one, will tell you that with the humans I've been privileged to learn with and from, it's so worth any of the difficulty. So this week, as always, see if you could find a way to step into someone else's shoes or step a little bit into their perspective. Just see if that changes anything. That's what I call getting real. Radical, meaning going back to the root, figuring out what that is that causes angst in you, and recognizing that frustration and upset is really a gift for us, for you, for me. Anything that frustrates or upsets me brings with it a potential gift. I just need to open it. So that's radical. Energized, and how it feels. Energy. Be aware. Be aware. You don't always have to be aware of things. You can be aware. There's a difference. Authentic. Step into your own authenticity. Own what's yours to own. Own it. I messed up. I made a mistake. I had a narrow perspective in that moment and I said something that I wish I wouldn't have said. Or I didn't say something I wish I would have said. And in the moment, I didn't think of it. And you might even say that in a boardroom somewhere and just say, I need a second to process this. I'm not good on my feet yet. I'm working on that. I'm working on processing in the moment. And I will say it wrong at first. Please allow me the opportunity to use my own process in this. That's authenticity. And then L is listening or learning focused. Bonnie says, thank you for speaking on our perspective. Yeah. I was very disappointed that politics has been polarized into our sports, NFL, halftime shows, etc., every aspect of our lives. I felt a unity after each USA win, especially during both hockey games, until the locker room recordings went viral. Immediately, I felt divided again. Well, Bonnie, just see if there's more nuance here than we're allowing. And we who are making the effort to see it differently are going to have to go first. Because it's so much more fun to jump in the mud, isn't it? To be in the mud with people and go, I know, we're right, they're wrong, we're good, they're bad. That's fun for a second, for only a second. In my world these days, that's not fun at all. Just because I've been working on it for so long. It's not fun anymore to be on a side that disparages someone else. But that's me. That's my perspective. That's my perception. What's yours? Let's share it. Share it with someone. Maybe start with somebody you feel safe with and see what could happen. See if you could bring a wider perspective to the next conversation you have. Just try it. I'm inviting you to try it. I'm not telling you you have to. But if you want to take that invitation, let's talk about it. That's what this podcast is all about. Circle up. Circle up. Let's get real, friends. Let's get real. That's what we do here. Thanks for being here, and thanks for being you. Thanks for being a listener. If you've heard anything you like, please help me spread the word. These are the kinds of conversations I'll have every week. Either just me and you guys, or if I have a guest and an interview, that will happen as well. I think this is episode number 298. We're getting close to our 300. 6 seasons coming up on 7. So thank you for being with me, and we'll talk again.